The Chime of Eden, The Chime of Eden, Part 1. The First Chime. When the sound came, it didn't knock. It whispered through the soul. Chapter 1. The Day the Sky Rang. The sound did not arrive with thunder. It did not tear the clouds or shatter glass. It did not belong to music nor to silence. It came like a memory buried so deeply in the human chest that no one remembered putting it there. Somewhere, a blind monk paused mid-step on a stone path that wound between prayer flags. He tilted his head not to listen, but to recognize. Somewhere else, a woman kneeled beside a grave in the dry rose-gold soil of Namibia, her fingers still in the shape of goodbye. She looked up, her eyes wet not from tears but awe. In a quiet laboratory nestled beneath the Scottish Highlands, a man with a forgotten name knocked over his coffee as the oscilloscope lit up with a frequency no instrument should detect. His mouth parted, not in disbelief, but in some old reverence he thought science had burned out of him. And in the spaces between all of them, in the cities, the deserts, the jungles and back alleys, in boardrooms and refugee tents, in prisons and temples and supermarkets and mountaintops, people paused, as if the earth had exhaled through them. The chime had no direction. It was not from above or below. It was not loud, but it was vast. Children felt it in their rib cages. Old men reached for their wives' hands, as if remembering something they hadn't said in 50 years. Birds stopped mid-flight, not because of danger, but because of awe. For precisely 9 seconds, every heartbeat in the world beat at the same pace. 9 seconds of impossible unity. 9 seconds of perfect rhythm in a species that had never once been fully synchronized. The chime did not ask to be understood. It was not an invitation. It was a remembering. Ezra Quinn was the first person to record it, though he would later insist he hadn't. In truth, the device captured something, yes, but not the sound itself. Only the shadow of it, the ripple left behind. It was like trying to photograph a ghost with a flashlight. He stood in the lab, staring at the screen. The waveform blinked at him, complex, irregular, and yet harmonic. Every theory he'd taught, every equation he'd trusted, fell like dust off the shelf of his mind. "This isn't sound," he whispered. "This is geometry." He would not sleep that night. Far away, in the highlands of Tibet, Brother Stephen opened his eyes for the first time in 21 years. Though blind, he saw what no one else had. Not images, but intentions. Not places, but pullings. He did not speak. He simply wept. It had begun. In a small coastal town where the sea forgot its name, Layla Mbeki stared at the sky as if expecting it to speak. She had felt the chime, not just in her chest, but in the soil beneath her knees, in the ache that lived inside her since her son's death. And in that moment, her grief lost its sharpness. It didn't vanish, but it changed shape, became rounder, more ancient, like something shared. It no longer belonged only to her. The world reacted as worlds do, confused, terrified, divided. Satellite operators reported no atmospheric anomalies. Religious institutions issued conflicting declarations. News channels called it the global hum, while Twitter named it the God ping. Some said it was aliens. Some said it was the Earth mourning. Some said it was a hack, a psyop, a mass hysteria. Some said nothing. In every corner of civilization, questions bloomed like spores. Why did only some people hear it? Why did others feel nothing? Why did it change the taste of air, the weight of silence, the mood of pets and children? And most unsettling of all, why had it stopped? In a steel-glass skyscraper in New York, General Miles Vreck removed his earpiece and muttered, "There's no such thing as a benevolent broadcast." He turned to the technician and said, "Find it, trace it, or bury it." Ezra Quinn uploaded the waveform, what little of it he could grasp, to a private academic network. Within minutes, it was flagged, quarantined, and erased. Within hours, 3 men knocked on his door. He didn't answer. He had already packed. Brother Sivan descended the mountain for the first time since he sealed his eyes with ash and prayer. The other monks did not stop him. One bowed as he passed. Sivan carried only a staff, a robe, and a bell with no clapper. It made no sound, but it rang in his palm. Layla dreamed of her son that night. In the dream, he was not dead. He was a child again, barefoot and glowing. And he stood in a field of golden light that hummed with the rhythm of a lullaby she'd never sung aloud. He looked at her with eyes both familiar and strange. "Mama," he said, smiling. "Can you hear it now?" She woke up with tears on her lips, and the sound still in her veins. It was not music. It was not memory. It was what came before both. And somewhere, far from maps and machines, a bell hanging in the wind rang once. Though the wind was still, its note did not fade. It echoed, and echoed, and echoed. Chapter 2. The Monk Who Doesn't Speak. The monastery clung to the mountainside like a secret too sacred to descend. It had no name on maps, no signage to greet travelers, no gates to bar entry, only prayer flags fraying in the wind, and a silence that grew thicker the higher one climbed. Brother Sivan had not spoken in 21 years. He had not opened his eyes since the day he sealed them shut beneath an almond tree, washing them in sacred ash and folding them into darkness by will. He had seen enough of the world. What remained to be known, he believed, could be seen without sight, heard without ears, understood without words. He sat cross-legged in the cold chamber at the eastern edge of the temple, his hands resting lightly on his knees. The dawn came with no color to him, only weight, the kind of weight silence wears when it is filled with the presence of something holy. Every morning, the same ritual. Breathe in, hold the sound of the world in stillness. Breathe out, return it without attachment. But this morning, something changed. It began not as a sound, but as a thinning of space, as if the air had parted slightly, letting something older slip through. There was no wind, yet the prayer flags rustled like they had been greeted. The earth did not tremble, yet Brother Sivan felt the floor beneath him grow warm. Then it came. A single chime, not from above, not from within, not from any direction, just everywhere. It rang, not loud, not long, but with a truth so pure, it entered him like a breath that had been waiting since birth to be exhaled. He opened his mouth, though no one was present, and spoke. "Eden has remembered us." The words surprised even him. His voice, dry and unused, cracked like a riverbed touched by rain. The room did not echo. The words did not need to be repeated. He had waited 21 years for the chime. Now it had come. Brother Sivan did not ask where it had come from. He did not need to. The source of the chime was not a place. It was a returning. He stood slowly, his body stiff with age, but filled now with something lighter than muscle. The bell without a clapper that he kept beside him, the one that had never rung, vibrated softly in his hand. He smiled, not because he heard it, but because he knew it rang. He stepped out onto the stone balcony. Thin morning mist hugged the mountain's ribs, stretching between peaks like breath caught between words. Below him, the monastery's sleeping courtyard stirred. One novice knelt mid-sweep, his broom paused in the air. They had heard it too. Sivan descended the stairs barefoot. The flagstones were cold, familiar. He let his hands trail along the stone walls, fingers brushing calligraphy carved centuries before he was born. Wisdom in lines, questions hidden in brushstrokes. At the foot of the steps, Brother Tembo, one of the senior monks, stood waiting. His face was pale, his eyes wide. "You spoke," Tembo said, nearly a whisper. Sivan nodded. "And your eyes, will you open them?" "Not yet," Sivan replied. His voice was deeper now, steadier, like a bell finding its true tone. Tembo bowed his head. "It woke something in all of us." "It did not wake," Sivan said. "It reminded." Later that day, the monks gathered in the inner courtyard, not for a service, but to stand still. They did not chant. They did not bow. They did not perform ritual. They simply listened. No second chime came, but the silence it left behind was not the same. It shimmered, not audibly, but in the space between thoughts. A tuning. One novice, young and troubled by his own unbelief, stepped forward. "What was it, Master?" Sivan turned his face toward the sound of the boy's voice. "What you heard," Sivan said gently, "was not a message. It was an echo." Of what? Of the first sound that made us human. That night, Sivan did not return to his cell. He stood at the edge of the temple ridge, facing the invisible moon. Though blind, he saw a shape rising in his inner sight. A road, not paved, not walked. A road through people, through time, through memory. The chime had not come to tell the world something. It had come to ask the world a question. Would it remember? Before dawn, he packed nothing. He left behind his robes, his scrolls, his cushion, even his bell. He took only a single string of beads and a memory of the sound. At the base of the temple, as the wind began to whisper through the flags once more, he passed the novice again. "Where are you going, Master?" Sivan paused, smiled. "To where it leads." No one tried to stop him, because though he was blind, they could all see he was being led by light. Chapter 3. The Mother and the Grave. The sea didn't move that morning. It held itself like a breath not yet exhaled. Layla Mbeki stood barefoot on the rust-coloured ridge that overlooked the Namibian coastline, her shawl pressed tight around her shoulders, though there was no wind. The morning sun was pale and reluctant, smearing gold across the dunes, as if unsure it wanted to rise. Below her, the grave sat beneath the crooked acacia tree, the only one that dared to grow in the dry hollow. The earth had cracked around the headstone, her son's name carved into stone by trembling hands. Her own. Cabello. 1998-2023. Your voice changed us. She had not spoken his name aloud since the funeral. Not once. Not even in her dreams. But when the chime came, she heard him. It wasn't sound. Not really. It was lighter than sound, and heavier than grief. It entered her like sunlight through stained glass, and for a moment, the world shimmered with the colour of joy she had buried years ago. And in that colour, his laughter. Not an echo. Not a memory. Real. Her knees buckled. She dropped beside the grave, hands clawing the dirt, palms shaking. It had been 2 years, and still her body remembered the weight of him. The smell of his hair after playing outside. The way he'd hold the silence just long enough before saying something too wise for a child. She whispered his name, not in mourning but in wonder. Cabello, then louder. Cabello. And then trembling. I heard you. The wind shifted. Not a gust, just a lean of the air, like something listening. She stared down at the base of the grave where the soil met stone. She remembered the moment they'd buried him, wrapped in a white shroud. Remembered slipping his journal beside him. A spiral-bound notebook filled with the scribbles of a boy who believed words could move mountains. His voice was in those pages. And now she needed to hear it. She didn't think. She moved. Hands plunged into the dry earth, digging with the urgency of hunger, fingernails cracked. Dust filled her throat, but she kept going. The earth, though resistant, felt alive. Not cruel, not hostile. Just reluctant to let go of something sacred. She reached the first layer of fabric. It clung to her fingers like breath on glass. A few inches deeper, paper. She froze. It was still there, untouched. The journal. She pulled it free, gently, reverently, brushing soil from its cover with the care one might use to clean a wound. The cover was bent but not ruined. A sticker still clung to the front. A small lion with a crooked smile. His symbol of courage. Her son had once said, "Even lions cry, Mama, but they do it with their eyes open." Her fingers shook as she opened the first page. Ink, still legible. Blue ballpoint, half cursive, half chaos. Cabello's voice. "When I die, I hope I become a sound people remember." Not a speech, not a scream. Just a sound that says, "You're still here, and that means something." She covered her mouth with one hand, the other gripping the book like it might vanish. The chime was still vibrating in her chest, not fading, just settling, like it had found a home inside her ribs. She turned to the next page. Maybe heaven isn't up. Maybe it's in. Maybe it's a place you can only go when you stop looking for it outside yourself. She cried, but it wasn't the grief she was used to. Not the howling. Not the numbness. Not the weight. This was different. This was release. The sun climbed unhurried over the sea. Light poured down the cliffside, flooding the dry earth with warmth. Layla sat with the journal in her lap, reading line after line of her son's thoughts. Some were funny. Some made no sense. Some read like prophecy. She did not ask what had happened. She did not question her sanity. She did not look for an explanation. She simply listened. A few hours later, she returned to her small house by the shore. Just one room and a porch that creaked in the wind. She lit the stove, boiled tea, and placed the journal on the table like a guest she had long awaited. Then she took a pen, and on the back page, beneath all her son's words, she wrote her first in 2 years. "I hear you. I'm listening now. Tell me where to go." That night, Layla dreamed of her son not as a child, but as something else. Light, voice, a ripple of laughter across a field of bells that had no source. And in that dream, he pointed not to the sky, but to the earth. When she woke, the journal lay open beside her pillow. The wind had turned a page. The words read, "Follow the silence. It will take you to the sound again."